Greetings, my friends. Mike Wan here. Gregorian calendar date, September 1, Gregorian calendar year, September 2024. And I have a video for you about natural astrology. Natural astrology is a term I use rather frequently, but I don't often give examples of what it looks like in action. And so that's what we're going to do today. But before I do that, I want to respond or make a comment about a video which I just put out regarding the Larimar mines. At the end of that video, I indicated that I was going to record a private video about my time in the Dominican Republic, and if anyone was interested to email me, because I'm not interested in seeing the movie, to email me and I'll send them the link because it's not my plan to put that out for public consumption. So a bunch of you guys responded to me, and that's who I'm speaking to right now. It's probably going to be about 2 weeks before I have that video finished, but I did not want you to think that, I'm leaving you hanging. So that said, let's switch back to natural astrology, and specifically we're going to talk about this lunation period. A lunation period is from a new moon to new moon. Traditionally, in a lot of different cultures, the moons are named. It's usually the full moon which is named. And so this is the harvest moon. That's one of the names for this particular moon. And lunation periods are an example of real time in comparison to false time, which would be a month. A month is conceptually based upon a lunation period, month and moon, but a calendar month, has absolutely nothing to do with the moon. Like if the first of the month happens to correspond with the day of the new moon, that's just chance. It's not designed that way. And so probably the primary benefit of practicing natural astrology is to begin to link conscious mind away from false time. And we're always surrounded by false time. We've been indoctrinated in false time from as soon as you learned about calendars. And you need to follow false time to participate in paradigm. So extra effort is required to also keep part of that conscious mind of yours linked into real time. And the benefit of doing so is numerous, but most simply stated is you become more grounded in reality of the mystery of life, not reality of paradigm, but reality of the life in which paradigm exists within. And so this is a practice for it. And so let's just jump in. So typically when in astrology, when they talk about lunation periods or new moons, that typically comes with the sign the moon is in. Like, it's the new moon in Virgo. And in natural astrology, we don't care about that. Primarily because signs are contradictory. There are multiple systems of astrology. There's tropical placement, sidereal placement, 12 sign, real sky, 13 sign. Like, there's all these different ways in which the heavenly bodies are applied to the zodiac or the ecliptic. And depending upon which system you use, you may or most likely will have your planet in a different sign. So let me give you an example right here. This here is the chart for September 3rd. This is the new moon. The new moon is when the sun, that's what this symbol represents, and the moon are in the same place. So this is 11 degrees, this is 12 degrees, or 1 degree apart. And in tropical placement, it shows them in the sign of Virgo. and right here is the new moon, September 3rd, 12/12, New York, New York. But this is sidereal. And we see down here that the moon and the sun are next to each other. We see they're still 1 degree apart. And now, instead of being in Virgo, they're in Leo. And so a practitioner of tropical astrology would likely paint a picture that the next lunation period is going to be imbued with the qualities of Virgo. And they'll tell you all these things to look for, and this is good for this reason, and Virgo, this is the time for this. But people who are practitioners of sidereal will go and say that the exact same period of time is actually imbued with Leo energy. And they would say that it's a time for all of these things that are in accordance to the Leo archetype. And so natural astrology, we don't want to deal with any of that. You know, you're choosing. You're choosing between what religion you want to follow. Do I want to be a Muslim? Do I want to be a Christian? Do I want to be a Jew? But we recognize the fact that it is a new moon. That is absolutely true. Where to go with this? Before I move on to that, I want to show you that these charts are exactly the same. Like, it goes Mercury, Sun, Moon, Venus. Mercury, Sun, Moon, Venus. We've got Mars right here at the ascendant. Mars right here at the ascendant. Saturn at the top. Saturn at the top. We've got Pluto right here at the 2 o'clock position. We have it right here. So we see that the planets don't move relative to each other in the plane of the Earth. All that moves are the signs. And so we want to go down to what doesn't change from system to system. Some people who practice or bring an awareness to like lunations, they often tie the new moon as an opportunity to do a manifestation ritual or maybe align the starting of something new. And I guess that makes sense. I don't personally do that, or I'm not that specific. I'm a little bit more fluid with my undertakings, but that makes some sense. Like, the new moon does represent something that's new. The moon is hidden at the new moon, and in our physical realm, things that come into manifestation, like a baby or a new crop, they begin hidden. You know, the baby, a fertilized egg, is invisible when it begins. A seed planted in the ground is hidden until the crop breaks through the soil, or that first little sprout. So, yeah, it makes sense, I suppose, to, if you want to align something new with the new moon. Me personally, I use the lunation periods as like segments of linear time. The new moon gives me an opportunity to recognize, okay, this 29-day phase is over and a new one begins, and gives me an opportunity to just, recalibrate. And so the way I do it is, I'm a notebook. I like notebooks. This is my primary notebook. This is my layout for this lunation. And how I do it is, each one of these lines are, what are these? These are rows. There are 4 of them. They correspond with the 4 different phases, like the first phase, the second phase, the third phase, and the fourth phase of the moon. I don't go by weeks. And I do this, and I do it by hand as a way to begin to recalibrate my understanding of time and stop thinking about the unfolding of time in Gregorian speak, and grounding it more so in an objective, observable reality, which is tied to the realm in which we're having our mystery experience within. So, overall, that is how I begin to meet a different lunation period. But that being said, this is a special lunation period because we've got two unique events that are occurring. We have an eclipse and we have an equinox that are happening during this lunation period. So we're going to look at those from a natural astrology perspective. So the last eclipse was April 8th. There's all that sort of hype about it. And now we're on to the next eclipse. Eclipses occur roughly every 6 to 7 lunations. So we've got a lunar eclipse that is taking place on September 17th. It will be at its maximum on at 10:44 p.m. That's when the lunar eclipse is. And so let's go and look at the astrological chart at that time. So this is Philadelphia. This is 10:44 p.m., September 17th. This is when the lunar eclipse is. So keep this in mind. This line from right here to right here, ascendant to descendant, it's always at the 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock position. When you see a chart like this, this is the horizon. Everything you see above it is what is visible above the horizon in this proportion and layout, and everything behind it or underneath it is in the hidden sky. So it's 10:44 p.m. So this is taking place on the full moon. So we said on a new moon, eclipses only happen on a full moon and a new moon. And on this new moon on the 3rd, we see that the sun and the moon are next to each other. So this takes place on the full moon, which is roughly 14 days, like 2 weeks. There's roughly 2 weeks between the new moon and the full moon, to use Gregorian timekeeping lingo. And it equates actually, to 14 days, the 3rd to the 17th. And we see here that on the full moon, the moon and the sun are completely opposite each other. And let's go look a little bit closer. So 8:41 p.m. is when the eclipse is, no, this is 10:44. So this is the eclipse when it's at its greatest magnitude. And we see the sun is at 25 degrees Virgo, and we see the moon is at 25 degrees Pisces. It really doesn't matter what sign you use. This is tropical. I could use sidereal, but we use signs to just know where to put them. What is going to be true for both sidereal and tropical is the moon and the sun are exactly 180 degrees apart. They're opposite each other. It's a full moon. This is high in the sky. And what makes an eclipse versus just like a regular full moon is the proximity of the full moon or new moon to the north and south node. So this symbol right here, this horseshoe, is the north node, and we see that the north node is, this is 6 degrees Aries, this is 25 degrees Pisces. They are they're 11 degrees apart. So 11 degrees apart when the moon is full and it's close enough to the node, you're going to get an eclipse. And I don't know if this is actually true. I've never read this, but this makes sense to me. The closer the new moon or the full moon or new moon is to the node is, the more likely it's going to be a full eclipse as opposed to a partial eclipse. Let's go look at this. This here is 6 degrees. This here is 12 degrees. So this new moon is, if this is where the node is at 6 degrees Libra, and the new moon is at, we're going to call it 11 degrees Virgo, that puts it 26 degrees away from each other. That's not close enough to have an eclipse. But when the full moon happens 14 days later, it's close enough to this north node, south node line. They're opposite each other. And that's when an eclipse is visible in the sky. All right. So what do you do with this information? All right, there's an eclipse. So what? Well, what you want to do is you want to see how personal this eclipse is. You want to see, does this eclipse line up with your natal chart? So part of natural astrology requires a real understanding of your own chart and being able to go and compare it to other charts, specifically charts of a specific moment. So the locations, when you see a degree and a sign, think about it like a street number and a street. This is the street number, this is the street, and it's telling you a specific location. So when we look at the locations that are in play on this eclipse, we see the sun and the moon. They're at 25 degrees Pisces and Virgo, and we see the north node at 6 degrees Aries, and the south node is opposite that at 6 degrees Libra. So then you'd go and look at your chart. So this is my natal chart right now, and I'll go look at these placements. I'll go look at these placements on my chart. So let's first go look at 25 degrees Pisces, and that would be right around here. And I've got some stuff going on right there. I've got Chiron right there, and I've got Mars right there, but it's not a direct hit. Now let's go look down here. I don't really have anything going on in Virgo. I've got my Pluto, which is close to it. And then where the, I guess the north node is and south node are pretty close to Chiron. So what you would do with this information, well, let me back up with that. So first place you're going to look is in those exact locations, and if not there, then you could look in other places on your chart, and you want to see if you have anything on the same number. So that when I mean the same number, 25 degrees or 6 degrees. Look at anything in 25 or 6 degrees, and that would indicate some degree or some type of geometric connection between your natal chart and what's happening with the eclipse. Now, with natural astrology, you walk a fine line between recognizing something to take note on, but then not putting too much emphasis on what it means. To me, the most important, I personally don't look, if an eclipse does not hit something directly, I'm not looking for like if it's trining something or if it's, some other aspect. But that's just me. I'm real kind of loose. Like in some ways I'm loose, in some ways I'm really specific. So this is just the way which I do it. And this practice is meant for you to discover your own sort of natural way. So if you go and you see that there is an eclipse or even the new moon and it's on something on your natal chart, how I at least meet this is you recognize that, wow, this is more personal for me. There's an eclipse every 6 months. Sometimes it's going to hit something, sometimes it's not. And now I've got like a direct hit. If I don't have a direct hit, I'm like, all right, it's an eclipse, but, pay it like less mind. But if it hits something personal in your chart, well then I'm like, well, let's pay more mind to it. Now, if you want to go a step deeper, you can look at what particular part of your chart it hits. Does it hit your sun? Does it hit your moon? Does it hit your Venus? And then what you would do is you would think about what each one of those, what it hits, what those planets kind of represents. And in a very light way, begin to have self-observation. You go inward with this. You begin to look at your life, at what's happening in your life, and then particularly that archetype which is in play. So if like you have Venus in play, Venus usually would refer to relationships. And if you have an eclipse on your Venus, that's going to point to something maybe of some significance as it relates to relationships. Now, what that means, I don't know. That's what this is about. It's about for you to go and know what to look at a particular time. It breaks up the monotony of the ever-present now, and it gives you a moment outside to pay special attention. Maybe something happens, maybe it doesn't. Maybe they're linked, maybe they're not. It doesn't matter. What matters is you begin to fold inside. You begin to bring greater awareness into your life circumstances, your inner world, your outer world, and you're linking this with the movements of the heavens. So now you're deepening any type of relationship that you have outside of paradigm sort of stuff. Like, you're not thinking about relationship on Valentine's Day. You're thinking about relationship because there's an eclipse on your Venus, and it's giving you time, or it's giving you a encouragement to put special emphasis into just seeing what is playing out in your life. Do you like where it's going? Are you satisfied? Are you bringing awareness there? You know, there's no wrong way to do this. The only wrong way, in my opinion, is to expect that something dramatic is going to happen. A great example is the last eclipse. There was so much hype, you know, particularly in certain circles, of that eclipse, something major happening, you know, in a biblical proportion. And it came and it went. It came and it went. And so the expectation was something great was going to happen. That eclipse had a lot of symbology, particularly for me. I made a lot of videos about it. I thought it was significant, but it was significant to begin to bring greater awareness to certain topics in life. It's my opinion that that much of how the fallacy of paradigm works is it creates the wrong expectations and tells you to look in the wrong locations or the wrong times. And so you don't know what you're looking for. Astrology is subtle. Natural astrology is looking for the subtle. It's more about the act than about the prediction. It's the act of being self-observant, of being self-aware, of being aware of what's going on in the sky and being what's going on in your life. Not necessarily interpreting one from the other, but recognizing that there is a link. So, okay, let's move on. So, eclipses come in pairs. So this eclipse on September 17th is then followed by, on the full moon, is followed by an eclipse that will happen on the next new moon. And that eclipse is October 2nd. We're looking at 1:45 p.m. Here it says 1:45 p.m. is the maximum eclipse. This is UTC time, so I convert UTC time to Eastern time because that's what I'm looking at. And then I pulled the chart for October 10th at 1:45 p.m. And I do the same thing. I look at this. And here, the sun and the moon, they're new moon again, so they're in the same place. And this time, the sun and the moon are at 9 and 10 degrees Libra. I'm using tropical. The lunation began before. So if you're talking in tropical talk, you would say the new moon was in Virgo, and now the following one is the new moon is in Libra, the next sign. And we see that's at 9 and 10 degrees Aries. And the North Node hasn't moved. It's still at 6 degrees Aries. I would say this is a tighter eclipse because where the eclipse is taking place is much, much closer to the North Node and South Node. And because it's on a new moon, it is a solar eclipse, and full moon eclipses are lunar eclipses. If you want to go with this type of thought, and I think this is a fair thought, new moon corresponds with newness. So the solar eclipse or the new moon eclipse is something new, and the full moon eclipse usually represents maybe something coming to an end or a completion. So we're going to go back and look at my chart again as an example of what to do. So this time, the previous time we looked at Pisces, at 25 degrees Pisces, and it was, yeah, there's some stuff going on, but there's not, it wasn't a direct bullseye. But if we go and we look at this new location, which is 8 and 9 degrees Libra, when we go and we look on my chart, this is 8 degrees. This is, what is that? That's Juno. It's an asteroid. Juno's at 8 degrees Libra. And then right here, we could see this is Chiron, and this is 9 degrees Aries, which is, almost an exact bullseye for where the eclipse is taking place. So now, if I want to go and bring some degree of, a greater degree of meaning between the eclipse and, my actual living experiential life, well, this eclipse, this solar eclipse, seems to be more poignant than the lunar eclipse. Like, I looked at them both. I'm like, all right, this one here, this is a tighter hit. And then I'll go and be like, well, what is this about? And, this is a double whammy, because not all the time, if you're going to have a hit with an eclipse or an alignment with an eclipse with your chart, will you have two heavenly bodies in opposition or opposite each other. And it just so happens that for this example here, I do. And this is Chiron, and Juno has to do with like marriage, with long-term relationships. And so for those of you who understand or speak the language of astrology, Chiron opposite Juno has certain implications. And to have and Chiron in particular, Chiron typically points to a wounding, right? It's a vulnerability which one has. And to have an eclipse on Chiron, for example, and particularly a new moon eclipse or a solar eclipse, that would point to like a something new, something different. So I'm going to go and I'm going to look at my relationship with relationships. I'm going to be looking at what could be new. Maybe not necessarily, particularly in this instance. Like if this were Venus per se, that might imply a new relationship, whereas this seems to talk about a quality I have associated with relationships. Chiron here only deals with relationship because it's opposite Juno, which is the marriage archetype in astrological nomenclature. So, like, that's it. That's it. Like, there's no more, nothing more than now I have an awareness, a greater awareness of maybe where to look in my life for this particular period of time. Maybe something happens. I'm not necessarily saying that things don't happen on eclipses, but I'm softening it. The expectation is very, very low. The only thing that is of importance is where I'm putting my awareness and attention. That's natural astrology. You let the other stuff happen and you figure it out by being observant and being self-aware. All right, let us go now to the second part of what I wanted to talk about, and that was equinoxes. So equinox is a little bit different. Equinox is not exactly an astrological occurrence, but it's solar, so it's very close. It's very close. The equinox is determined by the sun. And what do we got here? That's not what I wanted. Equinox. The solar equinox is a moment in time when the sun crosses over the Earth's equator, which is to say appears directly above the equator rather than north or south of the equator. Our solstices represent as far north as the sun goes and as far south as the sun goes. And the farthest north and south it goes there, that's called the tropics, the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And those latitudinal lines are corresponding solar activity onto the earth, if you will. But that's not really, to me, that's not the important thing which is happening. Like, you know, the equinox is more of a mental concept. You don't really have the means to know when the sun goes over the equator, per se. But the equinox implies something else. The equinox implies a period in which the time period, the real time period of a sunrise to sunrise event, the amount of daylight to darkness is exactly equal, 50-50. There's half light, half dark on the equinox, or at least that's like what is implied. And yes, that can be identified if someone were tracking. There are a couple different ways to do so. But even without that, we know that it happens, and we know that, there's a certain truth to say that your body, my body, is just one big sense organism, always taking in information from our senses. And our eyesight is primarily a light receptor. And though you may not be aware of it consciously, there's a part of you that recognizes when the amount of sunlight received in a sunrise to sunrise period is completely equal. And then it switches ratio from being more light to more darkness. And something happens inside the physical body. Because our senses have been dulled so much, we may not be acutely aware of these changes, but these effects are, they occur. And even though you might not be able to sense it physically in your body, the first step is an awareness that is occurring. And when you have an awareness to it, you become more open to it. And then you begin to think, like, what does a balance between lightness and darkness, like, what does that mean? This is a time of reconciliation, of bringing things back to equal between the light and the dark, and for whatever that symbolizes, the outer and the inner, the hidden and the open, all the different things which lightness and darkness is expressed in your life. It can, during an equinox, is a moment to recognize a balance and then a changing of the guard, if you will, from mostly light to like moving towards mostly dark. So, all right, let's go look at the equinox. It takes place on September 22nd, 2024. And here we have the equinox astrological chart. Like, the equinox really doesn't have anything to do with the placements. Like, the sun could have a full moon or doesn't have a full moon. You can have an eclipse on the equinox. That happens sometimes. It's independent of that. But I want to show this right here. This is from the NOAA website, where you can go and get sunrise and sunset times. And this is September 22nd, 2024. And it tells you the apparent sunrise is at 6:49 a.m. and the apparent sunset is at 6:57. And that's 12 hours and 8 minutes of daylight. Not exactly 12 even. So we're close. So this brings us then to this concept of the equilux. And the equilux is literally the day when there is equal light and equal dark. And I would suggest that this is a much more significant day to being human and aware of our environment than the equinox itself. The equinox is a concept. Maybe it happens the way it's being told, but we don't know that. But this is much more real. Our body on some level has an awareness of the amount of light to dark ratio. And so here we've got this again. This here's the website I use, the NOAA Sunrise Sunset Calculator. And on September 25th, we see that it is sunrise at 6:52 a.m., sunset 6:52 p.m., exactly 12 hours of daylight. So I put that in the day planner, the layout calendar, if you will, which I showed a little bit earlier. Like, this is the day of the equinox or the equilux. So I just have a greater degree of awareness of what is happening in this environment that we're having our life experience in. And as we're more grained, and that, not only that, but then coupled with the fact that it's a mystery. I may not understand exactly the implications, but I know something's happening. And so that brings me closer to an awareness and an integration with the realm as opposed to the paradigm. So I want to wrap this up with this last thing, which I just think, I can't reiterate enough, like, once you begin to realize that astrology charts are like literal maps, then the way you look at it changes it completely. You don't have to be able to interpret astrology. You begin to have an appreciation of what it's showing you. So look right here. We saw that that September 25th, and we see sunrise and sunset are both at 6:52 a.m. and p.m. So right here we have the astro chart for 6:25 or September 25th at 6:52 a.m. The 52 and the 25 are throwing me for a loop. And then here we have 6:52 p.m. And as I said a little bit earlier, I said that when you look at an astrology chart, that this line from the ascendant to the descendant, where this black triangle to this black triangle, always represents the plane of the earth, the horizon, where this is the east and this is the west. We're facing south here. So when you face south, the east is on your left. And here we see the sun, and we see the sun follow this line, and it is right here. It is right on the ascendant line, or the line of the horizon, and that's exactly where it should be. It's telling us the sun is rising at 6:52 a.m. That's from one website. And then we go and we look at the astro chart at 6:52 a.m. and we see the sun is exactly there. When you look at this chart, you're looking at what the sky looks like. Oh, the sun is on the horizon. The moon is visible right here. Oh, look, the moon is right next to Mars. Like, to be quite honest, like this evening is going to be a spectacular night for night watching. You're going to be able to see the moon, you're going to be able to see Jupiter, and you're going to be able to see Mars, and they're going to be right next to each other. Like, that's going to be phenomenal. But now let's go over and see the 6:52 p.m. And sure enough, we see the sun right here, right at the setting location. These charts are incredibly grounding. Like, what I mean by that is you are understanding what the reality, what this realm, what we can see, what it looks like. Like, you have a better understanding. This isn't just something, an abstract concept to be interpreted, but a literal map in which you can begin to become grounded in the reality of this mystery. So that's what we got going on. I wanted to, obviously talk to you about natural astrology. And then when I talk about starboard sessions, like, I bring a natural astrology perspective to looking at someone's chart, and I build it on the starboard, and it's not like your typical astrological experience. I've been talking more and more about these, and the amount of orders which I've been getting have been picking up, so I want to keep on encouraging that to folks. There are two ways which you get the natural astrology. If I'm lucky enough, if you are close enough to me here at Big Boy Farms, where I'm 90 minutes from New York City, 90 minutes from Philadelphia, you come down and I've got the most beautiful location in which we do these readings in person. And if not, which is the majority of folks, well, then I do a video recording. And so if you're interested in that, you got to send me an email and we'll arrange that, and I'll give you all of those details. It's $149 if you come and do this in person, and I charge $179 for remote, and the difference in dollar has to do with the amount of extra effort for recording and uploading and editing and all that stuff. But then there's also something else which I'm excited to talk about. This is the first time I've mentioned it. I have done 2 natural astrology courses in the past. Both of them are, they're web-based. It's like on Zoom. I limit it to 10 people. And I'm going to do another one this autumn, probably starting in October. So if you watch this, if this spoke to you, if you want to learn more, well then send me a note. I'll give you the details on the class. Only 10 spots, so once it fills up, it fills up. Both classes have filled up pretty quickly both times. So, that's coming up as well. This is definitely something which I am passionate about, and I would be, I look forward to sharing this with other people who it resonates with. So that being said, this is Mike Wan. I'm checking out. Hope to hear from some of you. Take good care.